Emotions enrich life. They bring color to our everyday being and allow us to find great pleasure in the act of simply living. Someone in love can feel overwhelming joy in being with those they care for. A master of something can find meaning and strength in proving himself to be the very best at his craft. A scientist can look at what others see as boring and bland and find possibility and wonder sitting there in plain sight. Emotions can bring us to a height of living that without those feelings, we would never reach. You are, to someone, their entire world. Your very existence gives them happiness, and each moment they spend with you is something that they will never forget. You are everything to them, and to lose you would crush them. And sadly, sometimes people's worlds are crushed. Losing a loved one is a horrible thing. Having someone that was there with you no longer be so leaves a gaping void in your heart which isn't easily filled. Losing a loved one is a chaotic storm of feelings that eat away at you from the inside. Anger, sadness, rejection, all these feelings sum up the emotion known as grief. The dictionary labels grief as a deep sorrow, especially caused by someone's death. But words are not something that can accurately describe the emotions felt by someone who grieves. However, a psychiatrist named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross once tried to explain the feelings of grief, creating what is known as the Kubler-Ross model, the 5 stages of grief. Many people have taken issue with the way it was written, and even the author herself later explained that the 5 stages are not meant to be literal stages of progression, and are more a representation of patterns seen in the grieving. It is a framework, not a guide to follow. However, I won't be criticizing it, as that is not the purpose of this video. But do keep in mind, if you are suffering, you should grieve in your own way. This is not a checklist to follow, but a series of patterns that tend to happen. The purpose is an examination of Gris, a game made by Nomada Studios. Spoilers, I suppose, although the story is vague and focus is placed much more on the emotions and experience over plot details. The game, without argument, is absolutely beautiful, with a gorgeous art style that clearly sets it apart from many other games coming out nowadays, and an ambient soundtrack that easily sits with the very best out there. It follows a girl in a strange landscape devoid of color, filled with crumbling ruins. As the game progresses, you travel through the world and slowly return color to everything once more. Each area of the game represents one of the 5 stages in the Kubler-Ross model, which the girl travels through as she copes with each phase after having lost her mother. In the model, rejection is the first stage, common traits being a rejection of reality, denying how accurate the news really is, or withdrawing in an attempt to flee and live in a false ideal world instead. This is shown in-game in the first area, a barren landscape of ruins and dust without any color. The girl, unable to handle the emotions she feels, cuts herself off from the real world and creates a fake, empty world that she can hide in to avoid facing the truth. Eventually, you are able to begin returning color, the first of which is red. After obtaining red, you move on to the next area, a barren desert littered with rocks and metal rods. The second phase, anger, involves lashing out at others or yourself irrationally in an attempt to find something to blame. This is seen in-game as eventually the winds begin to pick up in the desert. The music, calm and soft prior to this, is suddenly overwritten by a loud organ as the winds turn into a violent storm, blowing the girl backwards and preventing her from progressing. Anger, for as physical as it can be, prevents people from moving forward and causes them to stagnate emotionally. However, the girl also obtains an ability in this area. Now able to inflate her cloak, she is weighed down by it and isn't pushed back by the winds any longer. And with this new ability, the girl can also break through walls and objects that block her path forward. Anger, for as horrible as it can be, is also a part of stubbornness, a trait that allows some people to push despite everything in the world pushing them back. Eventually, she is able to overcome this pushback, and the once violent winds calm down. Climbing up a series of metal scaffolds and mechanical fans, the girl is able to reach another color, this time green. Life begins to sprout up again, with plants and animals and even an entire forest now appearing that she can travel through. Having overcome anger, there isn't anything that actively hinders the girl in this area. The opposite, in fact. Without compassion, without making a friend, the girl's path is blocked by many trees. The third stage of the model is bargaining, asking, if I change this, can you make things normal again? At its core, this phase is about looking to others. Your own powerlessness is realized, and you reach out, hoping that the people around you, God or someone else, can help you get through this sorrow. In the forest, after being aided by her friend, the girl pushes onwards and obtains a new power. By changing her cape into wings, she can glide, double jump, and with the help of small butterflies even launch herself into the air. With these new abilities, she goes even higher, and encounters a black monster that attempts to stop her. It appears as a shapeless mass of flying creatures that are able to fuse together into a single being that can change shape at will. This creature, seen in the previous area and released from the girl's violent lashing out, represents the next phase of the model, and how it can appear anywhere and in many forms. However, the girl is able to defeat the creature with music. The monster can't keep itself solidified after hearing the chiming of bells, and by ringing them, she is able to escape and find the next color, blue. The fourth phase is perhaps the most well-known, depression. It doesn't always take the form of overwhelming sadness, but it does cling to those who are suffering. It grabs onto them and attempts to drag them down under the surface where they can never escape. Now, the girl heads underground, going further and further, and after gaining the ability to swim, heading even deeper below the waters, down to a point where the light no longer reaches. There is the obvious analogy of ascending away from the surface and away from the light, but there is one important moment in all of this that shines above the others. Throughout the entire game, the girl has had another ability, the ability to sing. However, if you try to sing, the girl isn't able to. The loss and grief overwhelm her, and what was once something that gave her joy and happiness, now only lets out a small breath. Once the girl reaches the deepest depths of the caves and finds the final color, yellow, does she actively try to sing again? And even though she can't, after she tries, she begins to ascend back up to the surface. It is only when you try, no matter how slightly, can you escape from the mire of depression. However, the black creature comes out of the darkness and attacks, breaking the statue of her mother that the girl attempted to sing to. She runs and is able to escape into the water with it hot on her heels. She's able to get away for a short while, but it suddenly returns, as depression always can, and continues the chase. The creature gets closer and closer to devouring her, and right as it is about to snatch her up, a companion from earlier returns and saves her, escorting her back up to the surface. When there is no hope left, a friend can always lend a helping shoulder to lean on. Now, having made it through the caves, the girl can go on to the final area, representative of the final phase of the Kubler-Ross model: acceptance. In a crystal palace high above the sky, everything is colored dim and soft. Sources of light are able to reveal buildings that are hidden, but they quickly fade back into the dark of the night. At last, the girl obtains her final ability. At last, the girl is able to sing, and with her song, the entire palace comes to life. All the cold blues and blacks are changed to warm reds and pinks. Flowers bloom and the water teems with life. Beauty finally returns to the world again. At last, having accepted her grief and her loss, the girl, holding the mementos of her feelings, is ready to move on, to leave the statues littered everywhere, to leave the memories of her mother, behind but never forgotten. Even knowing the events of the game, it is still an absolutely beautiful experience. However, there is more to the game than just gameplay and atmosphere. Each part of the game represents a stage in the Kubler-Ross model, and many of the things in the game also symbolize more. The statues seen in the game represent the memories and emotions felt towards the girl's mother. They begin cracked and broken, chaotic and messy, and are easily crushed during the girl's moment of anger. But as the game goes on, and the girl works through the emotions she feels, they begin to reform. The dark creature, a clear symbol of depression, attempts to break them and prevent the girl from understanding her feelings and sorting them out. However, it is scared of music, of happiness and pleasure, and the love she has for her mother. And once the girl is able to sing and understand the mess of emotions within her, the creature is pushed back by the song and fades away. By understanding her loss and coming to terms with her feelings, she is able to overcome the grief of a lost loved one and is able to move on. In the beginning, you constantly descend down into the deserts, down into the forest, down into the caves, but each time, you rise back up to the central area, and eventually up into the palace, and up into the sky. For every moment of bleakness, every moment of struggle, she overcomes it. The winds of the desert are tamed, her friend opens the pathway through the forest, and the turtle guides her out of the darkness and back into the light. Falling into grief is not the end. You are still able to climb back out. Once you sort through the chaotic swarm of feelings within yourself, color returns to the world, and life becomes filled with beauty once more. It is only in the end, after rebuilding the statue, after overcoming the storm of emotions within herself, can the girl move on, no longer chained by grief. Gris is a beautiful experience, filled with all sorts of emotions. For those who wish to understand grief, those looking to overcome it, or simply those looking for a beautiful work of art, this game is a wonderful choice. A perfect example of how games can be art just as well as any painting or movie.